So I think the thing with the wave station is the individual waves that they used weren't as complex as the modern sounds of today. And so, using basically the same principle of wave sequencing, they created this thing called wave songs, and you can still do this, but with more sophisticated sounds. And so that's what I'm thinking is the next venture for me is to mess with this and potentially put it on a grid. So really the cool thing that could happen here, and this is talking about X riffs as well, it's kind of the next generation of all this stuff, is you're having not only original sounds or complex mixtures. So instead of each of these waves just being some kind of waveform, that's very basic and sort of synthesized from scratch. Instead, you have very complex waveforms as the sequence. And then you're using the cross fading to modulate between the various sections. Now, in a DAW, you wouldn't have these in a line like this, and instead you'd have them kind of step downward. And you'd have potentially a grid, right? So the grid's got your 4/4 or whatever. And then in each of those tracks, because now you'd have the tracks separated, you could process effects. So think about how crazily complex that would sound to have, let's say you have 20 steps. And so this one's playing, and then this one's playing. Now, these are all different sizes. So different lengths is what I mean, and they're all different kinds of instruments, and they're all very like complex, or they're muted. Like the section of the step could be muted, but what I want to say is they're also affected. So each of the 20 steps is also potentially affected. Now, so you have this huge thing. This is a concept for maybe next generation wave sequencing because it would be so cool to be able to do this within a sequencer or within a instrument. And what I mean is instead of having to program this, in a DAW, you can have the patch ready to go. That's why I say this is really a close resemblance to wave sequencing and all that stuff, the wave station. And so anyways, what I'm trying to get at is you can play a single note, and from the single note, you're triggering those 20 steps, all with these weird effects. That's the power of today's sound. I mean, and not to mention that each of the sounds could be uniquely crafted. So that's really, if you think about like how modern music has this way of switching up things, to make them so like what you wonder what just happened. This is a great example of like how the coding in music can really work wonders to just automatically create original sound designs and much more sophisticated things than you could do, just recording and trying to dream up stuff in synthesizers. So, anyways, that's a thought on like what could potentially be a next generation of wave sequencing as a synthesizer. And this is like the X Riffs synth. This is one version of it because I think that the powerful thing about the next generation of the lead sound and the wave sequencing and all these things, they have a way of you can choose what type of this crazy wacky lead sound could exist. So you could have something that's meant to be like the guitar, or you could have something that's meant to be the spectral riff randomizer, so that you can instantly randomize the feeling of the riff in your particular passage for your song. So it's very complex stuff, and we're talking about with all this, to come to think of it, one note. So in one note, you can trigger all this stuff. And so if they don't have a synthesizer, you can set up a sampler to do these kinds of things. And you can accent, like some kind of gate effect so that it makes it seem like it's synced to tempo, even if it's not. So that's how crazily complex the idea of X riffs, X chords is that even though it's not actually rhythmically accurate, you can rearrange that and sort of envelope all that so that it is. So, I mean, that's mind-boggling. And that's exactly what, people who are listening for cool stuff in music, that's just what we're looking for. When we're hearing these weird time signatures and we're hearing playing that's intentionally, off the tempo or off the key or whatever, the atonal stuff. This is exactly what's we're looking for when we're looking for the math side of things to make it even more, ear catching in weird ways. Now, sometimes you can do very complex things like this, and you really wouldn't know it. Like people wouldn't notice it. So you always have to keep that in mind when you're sound designing. Is the bang for the buck is always the most important part, because I'm not out to impress music theorists and PhD musicologists. I'm out to impress the listener, and I'm out to impress basically me, because I'm always trying to hear the next generation of audio manipulation, always. And so that's to keep it interesting for me even. And that's why I keep coming up with these crazy ideas to advance what's already super advanced, because I too am trying to research and discover and push into the new boundaries. Bye-bye.